Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel where I tell you about a book and whether or not I liked it. But today's video is actually going to be a different kind of video. Instead of my usual review type videos, this video is actually going to be me reacting to pet peeves and unpopular opinions towards books and book series. I've seen this type of video so much recently on this side of YouTube. I know it was quite popular about a year and a half ago, but all of a sudden it's really gotten popular again, and I've seen quite a few people actually be doing kind of an up-to-date unpopular opinion reaction video. So they would have done one a year and a half ago, but then they also have done one recently as well. And obviously I wasn't on BookTube a year and a half ago, so this is my first video of this kind. And yeah, I just find them like really fun to watch, so I thought it would be fun to actually react to a few. So a few days ago I put the questions tab up on my Bookstagram stories and asked for people to give me their unpopular opinions or pet peeves towards books, and yeah, these are the replies that I got. I'll be reading them off of my phone, so if I look down quite a lot in this video, it's just because I'm reading the opinions off of my phone. So the first one is, Harry Potter's world building is only good as a child. As an adult, it sucks. Now, I'd actually completely agree with this, because as a child, well, first of all, Harry Potter books are children's books, or like teenage books. They're not really for an adult audience. As a child, when you're reading a book, specifically a fantasy style book like Harry Potter, you don't really read into certain aspects of the book, like the rules of magic and things like that. You don't read too much into it or think too much about them. You just think they're really cool. Whereas if you're reading the books as an adult, you do tend to overthink those things and read too much into them, and therefore certain things about the world or the rules of magic won't make sense. For example, and it's the one that I always bring up or have brought up to me when we're talking about Harry Potter, is that muggles are just kind of written to be stupid. And what I mean by that is it Gringotts Bank, I think that's how you pronounce it, is in the middle of London, and it has a dragon in there. In one of the books, I cannot remember for the life of me which one, the dragon escapes and is flying through London. It doesn't eat a single human, and not one single human even notices it. And the reason that's written in the book is somebody mentions it, and then somebody says, oh, those muggles don't see nothing, do they? Or something along those lines. And that's just not an explanation. Like, how does nobody see it? I can't even remember if there's a better explanation than that. But I don't think there is. And it's just little things like that are quite little as a child. You don't think into it. When it says muggles don't see anything, do they? You'll be like, yeah, no, we don't. As an adult, you're like, it's a full-ass dragon. How can nobody see that? And it just makes no sense whatsoever. The next one is, I just don't get Jane Austen. Her books are awful. Now, I've never actually read I've never actually read a Jane Austen book, but I'm pretty sure she's read... I cannot speak for the life of me today. I'm pretty sure she has written the Pride and Prejudice books. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, they've never really appealed to me, any of her books. I'm actually just going to quickly look up what books she's written. Yeah, I was right, Pride and Prejudice, and Sense and Sensibility and those type of books. I personally don't like classic books, and I'm pretty sure her books are classed as classics. But at the same time, I know a lot of people that do absolutely love Jane Austen books and like just classic books in general. So yeah, I personally agree with this opinion of I just don't get Jane Austen's books or just don't like them, whatever. Because I'm like that. I don't like classics at all, really. I don't think I've ever read a classic that I was like, I love this book. I recently got The Great Gatsby because I haven't read that and I do want to, because I've heard that it's good, but I will let you guys know if it is once I've read it. I don't know when I'm going to read it. But yeah, no, I agree. I don't get her books either. The next one, or the next two, are, because they're similar, are hardbacks are only good for aesthetics. They are so impractical to actually read. And then somebody else simply said, I hate hardbacks. I 100% agree with this. Hardbacks are beautiful books. Like this, for example, has like metallic writing on it. This is Louise Pentland's Mum Life book in hardback. And yeah, I find hardbacks do have like lovely like metallic foiled writing on them, and they do look absolutely beautiful, but they are really impractical to read because they're just so big and like bulky. Whereas paperbacks, if you're travelling somewhere, you could easily slip them into a backpack and like they easily fit in there, like no problem whatsoever. Whereas a hardback, because it's so tall and it's thicker as well usually, because obviously it's a hardback cover, they don't bend as easily without like damaging them. And yeah, I don't like hardbacks. I will get a hardback every now and again if a book comes out in hardback first and I really want to read it. I don't really have the patience to wait for the paperback, but I'm that kind of person that once the paperback then comes out, I'll buy the paperback and sell the hardback. Also, dust sleeves or dust covers, whatever you want to call them, I hate them. I can't deal with them. The second I get a hardback book, that dust cover comes straight off, and if I know I'm going to keep the hardback, the dust cover goes straight in the bin, because I don't like them. That to me is what's impractical about reading a hardback book, is the dust covers, because you can't read a hardback book with the dust cover on, because then the hardback just slips and slides out of the dust cover, and it's just a pain. But then taking the dust cover off while you're reading it and then putting it back on afterwards is also just a pain, and like, who can be bothered to do that unless you're an avid hardback reader. The next one is Percy Jackson is better than Harry Potter. I personally can't have an opinion on this because I've never read Percy Jackson. I have read the Harry Potter ones, I'm currently rereading them, but I've never read or seen the film of Percy Jackson. Or films. I don't know, I can't remember. But yeah, I don't know much of Percy Jackson, so I can't personally say whether it's better than Harry Potter. But my best friend and my fiance, well, my fiance 100% says that Percy Jackson is better than Harry Potter, and I'm pretty sure that my best friend would as well, but I haven't actually gotten an answer from her yet on that one. I have asked her, but I'm pretty sure she'll say yes it is, because I think Percy Jackson is like one of her favourite like series of books. Don't quote me on that. So yeah, I have multiple sources that say that Percy Jackson is better than Harry Potter. I can't personally say because I've never read them. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you think it's better than Harry Potter, because I'd love to know. Also, let me know if you think Harry Potter is better than Percy Jackson, because apparently, at least in my life, this one isn't an unpopular opinion, it's actually quite a popular opinion. So yeah, if you think it is an unpopular opinion and you think Harry Potter's better, let me know. Next up is, I think Sarah J Maas is overhyped. Again, I've never read a Sarah J Maas book, and I'm not sure I want to. A few months ago, I really wanted to read her books because they seemed like the type of book that I would really enjoy. Then I joined Bookstagram, or I made my own Bookstagram account, and it was everywhere on Bookstagram for ages, for like at least 2 months. It was everywhere. Everyone and their nan's dog was reading a Sarah J Maas book. At the same time, no one seemed to actually like them. Like, there was a few people that were like, yeah, I like these books, I'm going to continue reading the series. But then there were so many people that were like, I only got this book because of how much it was hyped up on Bookstagram, and it turned out I didn't actually like it. So therefore, I don't think I want to read a Sarah J Maas book anymore, or her series of books. I might change my mind in the future, but for the moment, I do think she is overhyped, because it was one of those series of books that was just everywhere on Bookstagram, and in a way it made people feel forced to buy it to get their own opinion on the book, and it turned out that they didn't actually like it. So therefore, in my opinion, overhyped. The next one is The Great Gatsby is shit. A strong opinion, some might say. Again, I have The Great Gatsby on my bookshelf. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard very mixed opinions, but I personally think that I will like it. This opinion is from my best friend, so that's why it's a strong opinion. But yeah, again, I can't agree or disagree because I've not read it yet. I do personally think that I will like The Great Gatsby, just by what I've heard of it and what the story is about. I think I will like it. But again, it's a classic, I'd say, so a lot of people don't like classics and they find them boring and whatever. Next up is A Court of Thorns and Roses is poorly written. Again, I've not read it, so I can't have a personal opinion, but again, I have heard from a lot of people that they feel the exact same way, and that they didn't like how it was written, they didn't like the story overall, that they're overhyped as a series, because I think they're a series of books, and yeah, again, I can't have an opinion because I've not read them, personally don't want to read them because they're overhyped. Next one is Grimdark isn't the best kind of fantasy. Again, I completely agree with this one, because if you don't know, Grimdark is a type of fantasy that is particularly like dystopian, or like, I can't think of the word now. It's dystopian slash really violent, I guess. I can't actually think of any grimdark books that I know of or that I've read. I know that A Game of Thrones and A Game of Ice and Fire, is that what it's called? A Song of Ice and Fire. I know they're usually called grimdark novels, but they're not. They're not actually grimdark because they're not set right, I think. But yeah, grimdark is, it's where like characters, their lines are blurred. Like they're not necessarily good, but they're not necessarily villain. That's the only way that I can explain grimdark. And yeah, I would agree that it's not the best type of fantasy because I find grimdark novels are very predictable. And yeah, I don't really know what else to say on that. I agree that grimdark isn't the best kind of fantasy. I find their novels very predictable. Yeah. Next is Lord of the Rings isn't a book you should read if you already enjoy fantasy. Other authors overuse the tropes and cliches that Tolkien invented. Let me start that again. Lord of the Rings isn't a book that you should read if you already enjoy fantasy. Other authors overuse the tropes and cliches that Tolkien invented, making it a slog to get through. Once again, I've never read a Lord of the Rings. I've watched the films and I do enjoy fantasy as a genre of book. It's not my favourite genre and I definitely don't read a lot of fantasy, but I do enjoy the genre as a thing. But I also do want to read Lord of the Rings, but I do keep getting put off of reading it because of this opinion that if you read it, it will just be full of cliches. The reason that I personally still want to read it is because I can differentiate between cliches and Lord of the Rings, I feel like, if I was to read it. Because I know that Tolkien is the one that invented it all. So I wouldn't be reading it as just another fantasy novel. I'd be reading it as the inventor of all the cliches that all the other fantasy novels have used. And if you can also think like that, then I'd say that reading Lord of the Rings won't be a problem for you. But if you can't differentiate, and you do just see Lord of the Rings as just another fantasy novel, then it isn't a book you should read if you already enjoy the genre. The next opinion is fantasy and sci-fi are not genres, they are settings. I semi-agree with this one. I agree that sci-fi isn't a genre. It's a setting. But fantasy, not so much. Because with fantasy books, they could be set in our world but have fantasy aspects to them, or they can be set in a fantasy world. I don't know if what I said just made sense, but I know what I mean. Whereas sci-fi, I feel, is like the stuff that they use in the books and stuff like that. I don't know how to explain what I'm thinking, but I'd semi-agree with that. I do think that fantasy is more of a genre, but I can see where you're coming from with thinking that it's not necessarily a genre and that it's more of a setting. The next one's a long one, so bear with me. Fantasy readers, stop pretending that the Middle Ages means 11th century Britain. The medieval era was long and complex. Just because an author incorporates elements from the early or late Middle Ages doesn't mean their books are bad. And just because people in the Middle Ages didn't use things like showers, it doesn't mean that you can't include them. They're an ancient invention. I feel like all of these, I can't have like a personal opinion on them because, again, like, I just completely agree with this. Like, I'm not a person to read into books that much, especially fantasy books. I'm the type of person to just like, even if something is completely bizarre in a fantasy book, I'm the type of person to just kind of it go over my head and be like, yeah, let's just go with it. So all the people that are like, oh, this person mentioned a shower in their fantasy book, that isn't right. I'm kind of the person to be like, but why? It's a fantasy book. And I think I have an opinion related to that kind of thinking later on in this video. But yeah, I'm the type of person that just kind of goes with things. In real life as well, I'm just the kind of the person to be like, yeah, sure, why not? To do with anything, really. So yeah, I do agree with this, that people can think too much into fantasy and be like, that isn't right, when they don't actually know a lot about history. And they don't really know what Middle Ages means or how long the Middle Ages was for. So I agree with this one. People just need to calm down and learn more about history. That is a thing that I never thought I would say. I never thought the words people need to learn more about history would come out of my mouth. Because anyone that knows me that I hate history, or most of history. I find really boring and I can't be bothered with it. But yeah, for the people that like get really uppity about things like Middle Ages and what was part of the Middle Ages, they really just need to learn more about how long the Middle Ages actually was and what was actually invented in the Middle Ages or what was used in the Middle Ages. Next up, we have once again another book series that I haven't read, but the next one is Shadow and Bone is Overrated. Like I just said, I've never read it, don't really want to read it. I'm pretty sure the series that came out on Netflix recently, like the end of last month, was a Shadow and Bone series. I think that's actually what it's called. I can't remember. I started watching it and then kind of gave up on it. But yeah, again, Shadow and Bone is one of those books that once I joined Bookstagram, it was everywhere. But again, it had such mixed opinions, and there was a whole lot of people saying that they felt forced to get it because of the amount of people that were reading it on Bookstagram, and they wanted to get their own opinion of it. But then turned out to not like it, a lot like A Court of Thorns and Roses. So yeah, I can't personally agree, but from the knowledge that I have about the book, I do agree that it is overrated. The next one is a book that I have read, and it's The Midnight Library is Overrated. A lot of these opinions are, this book is overrated, this book is overhyped. But yeah, I think I'd agree that the Midnight Library is overrated. It's a good book. It's a good read. I like the message of the book. It's one of those books that like has a very kind of shouty message to go with the book. If you don't know what the Midnight Library is about, it's about a girl or a woman that wants to end her life. She's miserable. So she takes an overdose. In her like comatized state, she gets transported to a library, a midnight library, because it's at midnight. And in this library there is an unlimited amount of books, and each book is a different life that she could have led. And in the midnight library she reads a multiple variety of these books, sees what her life could have been like if she had chose different like routes or made different decisions throughout her life. And then at the end of the book, actually I'm not going to ruin the end of the book because I hate doing that, but at the end of the book there's a message that is like very shouty at you. You can kind of guess what happens at the end of the book by me saying that, but if you want to go and read it, go and read it. Like I said, it is a great book. It's very well written. Matt Haig is a good author. I do like his books. But yeah, I definitely would say that it is overrated because, again, specifically on Bookstagram, everyone and their nan's dog was reading it. The next one is They Both Die at the End is one of the greatest books out there. I would 100% agree with this because I'd say They Both Die at the End is probably in my top 5 books like I've ever read. I think it's written by Adam Silvera, who again is an amazing author. I love like his writing style. But They Both Die at the End specifically, it's one of those books that the title of it spoils the ending, basically. But throughout the book, you kind of forget that they're both going to die at the end. And you follow these two characters, Mateo and Rufus. And in this world, there is a new company called Deathcast, who between midnight and 3 AM on the day that you are going to die, you get a call from them letting you know that it's your last day on Earth. Or your last day alive. And these two characters get their call on the same day, and through a app they find each other and they basically meet up and they live their last like day together, trying to make it like the best day ever. And like I said, throughout reading the book, you do forget that they're both going to die at the end, and so when that happens, it shocks you. It was one of those books that literally took my breath away, because up until the scenes where they die, you just don't see it coming, and then it happens, and it literally, as I was reading, it made me go because just 1 second they're absolutely fine, and then the next second they're dead, and it's just, that makes it sound like it's a bad death. It's not a bad death, it's actually really well written and really well done, and it makes sense. And it like connects you to other parts of the book that you've already read. And yeah, it's an absolutely brilliant book. If you haven't read it already, I definitely recommend you read it. Yeah, They Both Die at the End is one of the greatest books out there. The next one is Colour Order on Your Bookshelf over alphabetical order. Now, this is a strong opinion in my opinion, because colour order, yes, it's very aesthetically pleasing and it does look absolutely beautiful on a bookshelf, but what's the use of it? There's no use for it. It just looks nice. If anything, it makes things a little bit harder, because unless you know the exact colour that your book is, how do you know where to look on your bookshelf to find a book? I personally like alphabetical order because I like to know where my books are. Although I'm the type of person that when I want to read a book and I know it's on my bookshelf, I have to look up who it's written by to be able to know where to look on my bookshelf. So alphabetical order for some people does make things easier and less time consuming, because you instantly just know who the book's by and you instantly know where to go on your bookshelf. But for people like me who have to look up who it's by, it's not necessarily less time consuming, because I also have to like take the time to look up the book and stuff like that. But for the people that don't have a massive amount of books, for example, I have a 3-shelved bookcase and that is all the books that I have. I have, I'd say 5 or 6 stored under my bed at the moment, but for now, they're all the books that I have. So I don't have a wide range of colours, or I don't have many books of a certain colour. So if I was to colour code my books, it would look very strange, because it would be like little blocks of colour. But they also wouldn't like be matching colours. It would be like different shades of greens and reds, and it wouldn't look aesthetically pleasing. Whereas if you have loads of books, you're more likely to have big chunks of books that are the exact same colour, so you therefore can colour code your books. So if you like your books to look aesthetically pleasing and don't necessarily care about finding your books quickly, then colour coding is fine. But if you like order to your life and you like to be able to just look at your bookcase and instantly know where a book is, then alphabetical order is best. Next is all YA books seem to either be a shitty romance book or a really obvious thriller. Again, I semi-agree with this. They do seem to be the two like most popular genres in the overall YA genred books. But I don't really agree that they're just either shitty romances or obvious thrillers. I've read quite a few YA books that were really good. Yes, they were either a romance or a thriller, but they weren't bad within their genre. So I disagree with this one overall. I do agree that all YA books are usually either romances or thrillers, but I don't agree that they're bad necessarily. So now I'm sort of moving on to like more pet peeves when it comes to reading books or just books in general. There still might be a few unpopular opinions throughout, but for the most part from now there are going to just be pet peeves. So if you're triggered by pet peeves specifically to do with books, maybe you want to skip through this part of the video. The first pet peeve is I hate when people dog-ear books. It ruins a book. It dents the pages. Why do you want like creased pages in your book? You don't. Unless you're weird, in my opinion. like, I'm one of those weirdos, like, I'm one of the weirdos that likes to keep their book looking brand new, no matter how many times I've read it. So therefore, when people dog-ear books, especially if I'm borrowing a book from someone, and they are the type of person to dog-ear books, it really gets on my nerves. Even though after I've read that book, I will be giving it back to them, I try to undo all the creases of the dog-earing as I'm reading, because I can't deal with it. It doesn't look nice. It's off-putting to me. I hate dog-earing too. The next one is, I hate once you read a paperback, the front cover always seems to not sit nicely anymore. It always turns up. And like I just said, I am the type of person that likes to keep a book looking absolutely brand new, no matter how many times I've read it. This is the one thing that I am 100% sure nobody can avoid. It's unavoidable that once you've read a paperback book, that the front cover, like the card front cover, will always just be like, say this is the book and this is the front cover will always be like this. It just will. There's no avoiding that. And I think that's because the front cover is card, whereas the rest of the book is paper. So as you're reading, the card slightly gets bent, like towards the spine. So the cover will always just flip slightly. But it does really get on my nerves as well. Next one is broken spines are the worst. My best friend, my friend Jess, hi Jess if you're watching, hates broken spines. She hates anything, like when a book is broken or looks out of place in any way, she absolutely hates it. Like it makes her sad. Like I know she bought a book not too recently, a while ago, from like a seller on Facebook, I think. And when she got the book, it was in awful state. Like there was stains on the pages and the spine was completely broken. You could tell that this book was read at least 50 times. And yeah, she got really sad about it. I don't go to that extent of hating when a book gets damaged, but damaged spines or like broken spines, they do upset me. They are the worst. Mainly because for the most part they're avoidable. You just need to hold the spine as you're reading, and then that like crease doesn't go down. For like bigger books, for books that are like 300 to 500 pages or onwards, they are pretty unavoidable, because when you get to like the middle of the book, it will just kind of go and like you'll get the single crease down the spine. But yeah, for the smaller books, they are completely avoidable. So when I get like a small book or a short book and they have a crease down the middle, I get really upset, because I'm just like, you don't look after your books. Or you just don't care about the spine. It's not necessarily that you don't look after them, but that's how it makes me feel. And people not looking after books makes me sad, because what's a book ever done to you? They deserve to be looked after. So I have 4 more, and they are actually opinionated. So the first opinion is, true crime books are always boring. Now this one hurts my heart because I adore true crime books. I don't know if adore is the right word to say when I'm talking about true crime books, but they all just, like, for the most part, they really interest me. I'm really interested in true crime. I'm the type of person that could sit all day with like a true crime channel on the TV and never get bored. All day, every day, I could watch true crime, like true crime documentaries, and never get bored. And it's the same with books. Unless I've read the same type of story loads of times, like there's quite a few true crime books specifically for serial killers, but they will all kind of just mention the most notorious serial killers. So therefore they're all pretty much the same. And I get how in that way they could be boring, because they're all like about the same people. But serial killers are not the only people or like stories that are in true crime books. So overall, as a genre, as a whole, they're not boring, but specific books can get boring. So the next the next two opinions are sort of similar, so I'll group them together. So the first one is Kindle books and audiobooks are not the same as reading physical books and shouldn't be counted. And the second is audiobooks are a cop-out for people who want to know a story but can't be bothered to read a book. Now, these opinions actually angered me a little bit when I first read them, because it just makes me feel like people that read physical books are a bit up themselves, because like not everybody can read a physical book for whatever reason. Like, it's not just because they don't want to read a story or like to read a book. They could have like a disability that means that they can't concentrate for long enough to read a book, or they could be blind. Like, there's so many different reasons out there other than not being bothered. That means you might need to listen to an audiobook. So therefore this opinion angered me, and I do not agree with it whatsoever, because basically audiobooks aren't a cop-out. They are another way of being able to know a story, because of people that have different abilities or disabilities, like blindness. If you're blind, you can't read a physical book, so therefore you'll have to listen to them. It doesn't mean that you're any less of a book lover just because you're not physically reading them. Also, Kindle books are basically the exact same as a physical book, only you're not physically turning the pages, you're just pressing a button instead. So to me, Kindle books and physical books are literally the exact same thing. So yeah, they're not a cop-out and they are the same thing. And people that have this opinion need to learn more about people in the world and how different abilities are a thing and how disabilities can affect people. But it doesn't affect their hobbies or their likes and dislikes. And it doesn't make them any less of a person or any less of a book lover, basically. And the last opinion for this video is Bookstagram is better than BookTube. Again, this is an opinion that I can neither agree or disagree on, because I agree with both sides. I agree that, or I don't agree. I have an argument towards Bookstagram being better than BookTube, and I have an argument for BookTube being better than Bookstagram. So I'm going to say both and let you guys choose in the comments below which is better. I'm going to start with Bookstagram. Bookstagram, or Instagram for bookish people, is better for communicating with people, For example, through messages or comments. If you have a large following on Bookstagram, it's still quite easy to be able to communicate with the people that want to communicate with you, like through comments and through direct messages. Because I feel like on BookTube, on just YouTube in general, the bigger following you have, the harder it is to actually communicate with your followers. Because if you're quite a small channel, you can easily look through all the comments that you get and reply to them. Whereas if you have a large following, you're less likely to even look at the comments at all, really. Because the larger your following, the more likely it is that you're going to have trolls in your comments saying horrible things to you. And for a lot of people, that can make them not want to look at comments at all, just in case they come across one of them. And it could, you don't know what that person is going through. It could like really badly affect their mental health. So therefore they would avoid the comments whatsoever. And therefore the people that actually do comment like opinions or like just want to say hi in the comments of a YouTube video, they don't get seen. And therefore the communication with their followers isn't there. Whereas on Bookstagram, it's really easy to look at all the comments and like reply to people, or like reply, you can even message people on Instagram, which I don't think you can do on YouTube. So yeah, for communicating with followers, Instagram is better. But for getting your opinion across, like if you have a long opinion or multiple opinions on a book or a book series, BookTube is better. Because on Instagram, even if you have like the most eye-catching, intriguing photo of the book, it could be like really aesthetically pleasing, edited like really beautifully. A person will like the photo and see that there is a long caption underneath it and then just scroll on. Because I feel like Instagram is for quick things, like quick like ratings, or like a quick I liked this book or I didn't like this book and here's like a short paragraph of why. Because people, even though we're on Bookstagram and BookTube because we like reading, I feel like a lot of people will see a long caption and not be bothered to read it, because you think of Instagram as just a quick like review place. Whereas on BookTube, you would happily sit there, or at least a lot of people would happily sit there and watch a half-hour video of somebody talking about a single book. And therefore BookTube is way better for getting your opinions across, because people will willingly sit there and listen to everything you have to say, whereas they're a lot less likely to read what you have to say. Which is a bit hypocritical of the community of bookish people, to not want to read a long caption of a review, but they'll happily listen to it. Especially if you have the opinion that audiobooks are a cop-out for physical books, but then you will watch a review of a book but not read a review of a book of the same length. That is pretty hypocritical. So if you have that opinion, we wouldn't be friends, let's put it like that. But yeah, they both have their good qualities and they both have their bad qualities. I don't personally prefer either. Like, I love them, for the moment, I love them both as much. I would say because my book channel here on YouTube is such a small channel still, I don't communicate with anyone on here. I literally just put up the video and then just kind of leave it because I don't get comments at the moment. Or anybody that does watch my videos and wants to ask me a question or comment on them, they'll head over to my Bookstagram channel, my Bookstagram page and message me or comment on one of my pictures. So personally, for the moment, BookTube is better for me, but I do enjoy both just the same. And that is all the opinions and pet peeves for this video. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see another one, either leave your pet peeves or your unpopular or popular opinions in the comments below this video, or like I said, you can head over to my Bookstagram page, which I will leave a link to in the description, and message me on there, or if I ever put up the little questions thing again, you can reply to that. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up because that helps me a lot to know what people are enjoying and not enjoying. If you have any videos that you would like to see from me, then again, please do leave them down in the comments below. But yeah, other than that, that's it for this video. Have a lovely week and I will see you again soon. Bye!